Hi everyone, it's good to have you here again. My name is Neo and I'll be walking you through the concept of CSS positioning. Okay, so let me just give you a brief introduction to what CSS positioning is so as to have like a mental picture of it. Okay, so CSS positioning, they are properties given to elements in a document that determines the position of that element. Okay, so I don't want it to confuse you now. So let's just take it one after the other. So when we talk about CSS positioning, so there are those properties given to elements. So you know our elements, okay, given to elements in a document. You know our document is the HTML document, right? In a document that determines the position of that element. Okay, so it determines the position that is where that element will be, right? Okay. So and before an element can be positioned, we will make use of the left, right, top, bottom, and z-index properties. That is, we give each of these property a value so as to determine the position of that that particular element in a document. Okay, so this is just like a brief intro. So let me just walk you through the files I have here. So I have my index.html file where I already have some elements in it. So these are my div tags, and I gave each of the elements a class, and I styled this element. I gave them different styling. So the first box, that is box 1, has a background color of red. The box 2 has a background color of blue, and the box 3 a background color of blue violet. So let's see it in action. Box 1, box 2, box 3, right? Okay, so the next thing I'm going to move on into is I'm going to walk us through the different types of the positioning that we have, the different types of the position properties that we have. Okay, so we have 5 types of values the CSS property takes. So the CSS position property takes. So we have 5 types of the position property, which are the static, the relative, the absolute, the fixed, and the sticky property. So we'll be working with each of these properties to see how they work so as to have like an understanding of each of them. Okay, so remember we already have some elements in the index.html file, and we've already styled them. So this will make us move to the first property, which is the static property. So we're going to see what it is. Okay, so for the static property, it is the default value given to all elements in a document at the point of creation. That is, it is the default property, it is the default position property every element takes when they are first created. So if you do not change any of the position property, if you do not give it another property, it's going to take the static property. So showing us showing us what we have in our browser, we see that the box 1, box 2, and box 3, it follows they are stacked on each other. That is, it follows suit the way they are being created, right? So for the static property itself, all the elements follow the normal position flow they are created. And one thing we need to note about it is that left, right, top, bottom, and z-index do not have effect over the positions of the elements. Remember, we said earlier in our introduction that the elements can be positioned using the left, the right, top, bottom, and z-index properties. But in this static property, in this one, the left, right, top, bottom, and z-index does not have any effect over the positions. So even if you give the elements a left and have the value set to probably any value what we want, probably let's say 20 pixel, the element is still going to be in the same position they were earlier. So let me just show us. Let me show us what I'm saying. Okay, so we can see that this is our box 1 here. Okay, so let's give it the position of static, right? And let's see if it's going to change if we give the left a value, if the element itself is going to change position. Left, let's say 20 pixels. Okay, so we can see that the element is still in the same position. It did not change nor move from the position it was earlier. So that is that about the static property. It is the default property given to every element at the point of creation, and the left, top, bottom, right, z-index, and all of that, it does not have effect over the position of the static position. Okay, so that is that about the static. Okay, so let me just explain when I say that they follow the normal position flow they are created. So let me create more things here. Let me just have another section. So let me just give this p tag and say this is the first paragraph. This is the first paragraph. Second paragraph and third paragraph. So can you see that they come one after the other? So that is the way it's going to be in this is it. This is the result. So they follow suit. Okay, so which takes me to the next property that we'll be looking at, which is the relative property. So let's see what the relative property have for us. Okay, so the relative property, any elements given any element with the position relative, right? They follow the normal position flow they are created, just like this. Just like this. They follow the normal position they are created, just like the property. But unlike the static property, where left, right, top, bottom, and z index do not have effects, unlike the static property, if you give any element a position of relative, the elements will be affected by the left, right, top, bottom, and z index. So all of this is going to affect the position of the elements. So remember that when we gave the box one a static property and we try to tweak the position using the left, when we try to tweak the position using left, it did not change the position of that element. So let's see now. Okay, let me just leave this one, position of static. So we'll see the difference. And left of, let's say, 50 pixels. Okay, knowing that it did not change, right? Okay, so let me give box 2, which is the blue box here. Let me give box 2 a position of relative to show you that they have effect on the elements. Okay, and let me give it left. Let me give it a left of 50 pixels. So can you see what I'm saying? You can see the difference between box 1 and box 2. For box 1, it has the position of it has the static position, and the left has a value of 50 pixels, but the position of that element did not change. But for the box 2, it has the relative position, and the left has a value of 50 pixels, and we can see that the box moved a little bit away from the left hand side, which shows that it has effects over the position of that element. Okay, so another thing we need to take note about the relative property is that when you make use of relative property, the space that is the former position the element was earlier is going to be left empty. Nothing is going to take up that space. It's going to be left empty. Okay, let me just show us what I'm saying. So let me increase this to 250 pixels, the left to 250 pixels. So can you see the space is still there, right? Okay. So which is going to take me to my the third property we have, which is absolute. So one thing I need you to know about the absolute property is that any element that takes the absolute position, they are positioned relative to their parent element or in respect to their parent element. So whatever the parent element is, we take the parent element as the container. So not to get you confused, we take the parent element as the container. Whatever the parent element is, that is what that element will be positioned in respect to. And unlike the relative position, when we change the position of any element given the relative property, the space will still the space will be left empty. There is nothing will take up that space. But for absolute property, the space will be closed up. It's going to act as if that element doesn't exist in that position earlier at all. It's going to be taken out totally. and be moved to the new position we gave to it. Okay, so let's see that in action. So what I want to do now is, I want to create, okay, what I want to do is, okay, in my box 3, okay, so yeah, in my box 3 elements, I want to give, I want to create another box inside the box 3 elements. So for us to understand what I'm saying very well. In the box, so I'll just style it here. That's in our box. Okay. I want the height to be, it's not going to be as big as the parent element. So I want the height to be 100 pixels. The width to be 100 pixels too, and the background color, I want it to be black. Okay, let me reduce it. I don't want it to be too big. Let me make it 50. 50-50. Okay. So now I want to show us, I want to explain something to us, and I will show us that in action. So the absolute property is of a particular element is being positioned in 2 ways. That is, remember we said it is positioned relative to their parent element, right? So if the parent element, which is this now, this one, if the parent element is not given a property of relative, like that is, if we do not set the property to have a position of relative, right? And we go ahead to give this element, probably the left, we give the left a value of 20 pixels. Is going to, the position will be relative to the HTML element. Okay, I know it might sound confusing, but let me show us here. Okay, we know that this is where our inner box is. Okay, so I don't want to give, it's inside the box 3 here. I don't want to give this box 3 a position of relative. So let me just give this inner box a position of absolute. So let me show you the behavior. What it's going to do, remember I explained earlier, is that it's going to move out of whatever position it is. It's going to move out of that position and takes in the new position that you won't even have any trace. So let's give it the top value to be 20 pixels. Okay, so can we see it takes the position is in respect to the HTML element. Let me comment out this box 1. Let me comment out that box 1 so that you won't be confused. You won't think that it's that box 1 is okay. So can we see it's taking the position of the inner box is being positioned in respect to the HTML element, remember that all of what we have, what is displayed, and even the information that is used by the browser, everything is being wrapped inside the HTML element, right? So when I gave it that position property of absolute and a top of 20 pixels, the inner box changes its position relative to the HTML element. So it takes the HTML element as its own parent element. Do you get it? It takes the HTML element as its own parent element. But now, let me give, we create the inner box inside the box 3. So let me give this box 3 a position of relative to see what I'm saying. Okay, can you see that it's now back into the box 3? Let me return the box 1. We can see that it's now back into the box 3. Okay, let me change it. Let me give it a bottom. Let me change this top to bottom. Okay, of 20 pixels. Can you see? Or if I want it to be 0, I want it to be below. So can you see? So the absolute, any element that is being given a property position of absolute is going to change position. Is going to change position in regards to its parent element. If the parent element is being given the position property of relative, okay, so it's going to remain inside that container. So the property is the container. Don't get it confused. So it's going to change the property inside that container. But if you do not give the parent element, which is the container, if you do not give the parent element a position of relative, then that particular element is going to change position in regards to the HTML element. It's going to take the HTML element as the parent element. It's going to regard the HTML element as its parent than its container. Do you get? Okay, so I can tweak this. I can say left, give me 50 pixels. Do you see? I want to change my bottom to 50 pixels. Can you see? So you can move that around. Okay, so that is that about that. So which takes us to the next property, which is the fixed property. So any element given a position of fixed, they have the same behavior with the absolute property. But unlike absolute, fixed property takes the HTML element as its parent, and it is positioned in relative to the HTML element. Okay, so remember we said that for the absolute, if you do not give the parent elements, or let's say the container it is in, if you do not give it a position of relative, it's going to take the HTML element as its parent, and it's going to change position in relative to the HTML element. But if you give the parent container, if you give it a position of relative, any change, any position that inner element will be making, any position it will be making is going to be in respect to that container, the parent container. But unlike fixed, no matter what the parent container is, it's going to take the HTML element as its parent container. So let's see it in action. Okay, so I want to, okay, so let me leave this here. Okay, so I'm going to change the box 2. I'm going to change the box 2, or let's say I create another, box. Okay, let's say I create another box here. Let me create it after. Let me just give it another box. Okay, so okay, let me change the style here. Another box, and let me give it, let me call it here, another box. I want to give the background color what? Okay, let's choose this aquamarine. Okay, so this is another box. So to see it in action, let me give it a deeper color. Okay. Okay. So to see the fixed position in the fixed property in action, let me give that another box, a position of fixed. Okay, a position of fixed, and I want it to be fixed to the top 0. Let me give it a left of 500 pixels. Okay, so this is where it is. So it's going to stay there. It's not going to move. Do we get? Okay, so let me add more elements. Or so let me just add a, okay, let me add 100. Okay. Okay, so let's see it in action. So we fixed our another box element to the top. So this is where it's going to be. It's not going to move. So even when we scroll down our page, it's still going to be there. So let's see it in action. I'm going to scroll down the page now. Can you see? Let me add more content. This lorem I'm using is a dummy text. So let me add more content to it. Okay, so you see, it's not going to change. It's still going to be there. So we say that, okay, just fix it to the top. It should be in the top. And it can also, we can also make it, remember we said that you can use the top, left, bottom, and right property to change the positions of the elements. So let me change this top to bottom. So this one now is going to be at the bottom of our page. So when we scroll, we see it's still there. Nothing takes it out of that place. So probably you want to create a nav, you want to create a nav bar. Let me change back to top. So let's say you want to create a nav bar that sticks to the top and you don't know how to do it. So this is just the way to do it. You give it a position property of fixed. So it's going to stick to the front. So when you are scrolling down your other pages, it's still going to be there, right? Okay, so let's see the next thing we have. Okay, so I guess this is the last. Okay, so the last and the fifth and the last property we have here is the sticky property. So for the sticky property, any elements that is with the position sticky, it has two behaviors. That is, it has the behavior of the relative and also the behavior of the fixed property. Do we get? So it takes in two properties itself. And the initial property that is at first, before, let's say, scrolling or anything, the initial behavior starts with relative and switches to fixed at a point. So you can understand that by using an example. So don't let that confuse you. You will see it in the example given right now. Okay, so okay. Okay, so I'm going to use my box 2. I'm going to use this box 2. So I'll take off this position relative I gave it earlier and I'll give it sticky. Okay, so can you see that it's still in the same position it was when we gave it the position of relative? And remember the definition I gave it earlier, that it takes both the behavior of the relative and the fixed position property. So let's see it in action now. The initial behavior is the relative. So let's scroll to see what is going to switch to. Okay, so let's scroll. Okay, let me add more content. Let me add more content so it can scroll well. Lorem Andre. Okay, so we see that this is what we gave it. So if we want, this is the initial position, it takes the relative position property. So let's say we want it to stick at the top at a particular point. when we scroll. So apart from this left that I gave it, I'm going to give it a top of 10 pictures. So let's scroll. So can you see when it gets to that part, when it gets to the top, it's stopped. So let me change it to, okay, that I don't want any space. I just want it to stick to the top totally. Okay, so the initial behavior is relative. So let's scroll. Okay, so can you see? So probably when you have a nav bar that you want it to be fixed, let's say at a particular point or at a particular position. So just give it a sticky position. Then when the user scrolls down, it's going to stick to the top. Do we get? Okay, so let me take. Okay, so that is that about all of the five positions property that we have. So thank you. In case you are confused, in any of the properties or any part, what you just need to do is go over the video again. Just go over it again, and I'm sure you will understand. And okay, and even if you do not understand at, let's say you just watching it, try to do practicals. Try to do practicals with it. Play around with whatever you create. Make examples. Use the properties and play around with it. I'm sure that the more you use it and the more you play with it, you will surely be conversant with it and know how they work. Okay, so another thing I want you to know is that I'm making use of top left here. It does not stop at that. So I can use the bottom here. Okay, let's say bottom 0. Like this. So you can just okay, move the left. Oh, sorry. Okay, I don't have enough content. So just play around with it. Like, where is the one I gave a position of absolute? Okay, so just play around with it. So for this fixed, let me change the top to bottom to see what is going to be. You see that it's here now. So just play around with it. Okay, so the one other thing I would like to show you is, you remember that there are times that you might want a particular element to be on top of another element, or you want it to be behind another element. So what we use is z index. Okay, so let me remove okay, where is this another box? Okay, let me remove the fixed property now. Okay, so it should be, everything should, let me remove this to show you using the z index, how we make it work. Okay, so this is what we have. Okay, let's say I gave my box 2 a position of absolute. You know, it's going to go out of that position it is currently. Okay, so this is my box 2. But one thing is that this another box is behind this box 2. So let me give it a left to see left of 50 pixels. So can we see? Let me increase it. 150. So can we see? If I want my box 2 to go behind this another box, if I want the box 2 to move behind it, this is what is going to, I'm going to give it a z index of -1. So can you see now that now the box 2 has moved to the back of this another box. It has moved to the back of it, and this another box is on top of the box 2. But so for if you want an element to move to the back, you use the negative value, but you give a value, you give the value a negative sign. But if you want the element to move to the front, you want it to be at the front, you give the element a positive value. So instead of -1, it's going to be just 1. You see? Okay, so let me give this box 1 a position of absolute 2, and I want the left to be 200, so they'll be stacked on each other. Okay, this is it. Let me make it to 50. Okay, so we have another box 2 and box 1. We see that box 2 is on top of both of them, and box 2 has z index of 1. But if I remove the z index of the box 2, if I remove the z index of the box 2, it's still going to be the same thing, right? So let's say I give the z index a value of 5. It's still going to be on the same position. So I want to show you with box 1. So if I want the box 1 to come to the front now. If I give it a z index of 2, it's not going to change positions because this box 2 has an higher value of z index. So let's say I want it to come to the front, then I can give it a value of 6. Then we can see that box 1 now is in front of box 2. So that is that about that. If we're confused on any of the parts, just go through the video once more and make research, play around with all of those properties, play around with it. And it does not stop at boxes alone. We can also make use of paragraphs. We get any element at all, as far it's an element, you can make use of it. So just play around with it to get a full understanding. So this is where we're going to draw the curtain today. So see you some other time. Thank you. Bye.